get this show going. Who's going to lead us on today?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Day 2 of the 2027 budget work session. Thank you for yesterday, and thank you for allowing us this morning to go over some additional, more detailed items related to some revenue streams, mill levy impacts, and we will go over the financials and next steps. So I'm going to kick it off with this slide. This is just a reminder that everything that comes before you as a shift or a change in priorities or programming or staffing is tied to our strategic goals. And our strategic priorities are sustaining exceptional public service, which I know we chatted about at our strategic planning session, I want to say last month, but it was several months ago, creating a welcoming place to call home and plan and grow for the future. So I just want to remind you, we try to tie everything that we do to these because it's part of our story. We're going to kick this off to Ben, and we're going to go into some details in the financials. So if you want to pull, I know we passed out an updated financial workbook or a budget. If you could pull that out, and then we will kick it off to Ben to start going over some of those numbers.
Yep. And I'm not gonna walk through all of it. What I want to do is kind of set you up to where you understand what we put in front of you is the biggest thing. So I'd like to start with page 1, if you would, right behind the cover. So we've got 2025 activity. I know yesterday we brought up the fact that we need to come back to you with where 25 ended. What this sheet shows is just the total revenues for the budgeted funds, the expenses for 2025. You can see in general fund at the very top of that table, $26.9 million in revenue, $26.2 million in expense. The fund ended with a net surplus in 25, which means we added the cash balance. We went from 7.3 to $8 million. And then that's the way that works all the way down. So on the very far right-hand side, you can kind of see what the cash balances were at the end of 25 on each one of those. And like I said yesterday, deficits aren't necessarily a bad thing because we spend down cash on projects, things that you guys save up for. So there's some of those items as well. There's 2 pages very similar. The first one is 2025. If you flip it over, the next one is 2026. It's set up exactly like 25. So what this is just our estimate for the end of the year, for the end of 2026. And that estimate is maybe a little unfair because it's based on the budget. Typically, you never spend as much budget as you budget. It's anywhere from 2 to 3% lower than your budget on average, which is usually the benchmark I use. So that $1 million deficit, which was planned in your budget, more than likely won't be $1 million deficit. It'll be somewhere less than that. Still a healthy cash balance by the end of 26 for the general fund. And again, you can kind of see what the cash balances look like on each one of those. The ones I typically take a look at on a routine basis is the general fund, and then your utilities. So it's a solid waste, stormwater, if there is one, and then water and wastewater. Those are typically the ones I pay attention to the most. And if we bring back a quarterly review or quarterly report to you guys, that's what we would continue to report on, is where those trends seem to be going. The next page is what the rest of the document will look like. The next page is basically the property tax supported funds only. They're all added together, and what this does is show you the total revenue that's supported by property tax fund along with their expenses. We compare 23 all the way to 25 for total activity, and then the budget for 26 year-to-dates through May. So you can kind of see where we are so far this year. And then, of course, the 2027 total budget and prelim is the preliminary because it's proposed, obviously. Now, at the top of that, there's a dark blue block with some white lettering. This piece doesn't mean a whole lot because it's got all the funds added together. But as we progress through this, you'll see each fund has that block on it. You'll be able to see, and I'll walk through that with the general fund. So this page is you can see at the very top, the general fund, airport, library, special liability, and bond and interest funds. So of those tax supported, your cash balance estimated by the end of 2027 is $6.6 million. Typically will be more than that because we've got 26 to end, and then of course we got to get all the way through 27. And with budgets being conservative on the revenue side, we try to come out ahead unless it's a planned spend down. The next page that's in there is something that I was asked to do probably 30 years ago by a governing body. What is my total budget? When somebody asks me on the street, my neighbor keeps asking, how big is the budget and did it change? That's what this page does. It gives you the history for the entire budget from actual in 2023, 4 and 5. And then the very far right, it's got the total preliminary budget. At the bottom, you see net surplus deficit. Right above that is expense total. So yesterday, I mentioned, and it was in the slide presentation, $62.4 million. That's your total budget. And that's what that number is on the 2027 column. You can kind of see how that compares with the column before, the two columns before that shows the 2026 total budget, 61.2. So you can kind of see the movement. Sometimes those numbers are quite a far apart because you've got capital in there. This time it's a lot closer. But then on the left-hand side, you can kind of see what the major categories are on each one of these. Taxes roll, property tax and sales tax up together. Intergovernmental or payments, anything coming to the city between the county or other agencies. And then one of the other big ones, obviously, is charges for services. That's where your utility charges are in that block. And that's going to be a fairly sizable one. I'm sorry, that's charges for services in the general fund. Utility is further down. 47 utility revenue is separated out. I forgot we separated that one out. 19.5 million, up a little bit from 2026's budget.
Remind me, IT line 61 on the expense side is being moved elsewhere. It's got a goose egg in it.
Got a zero in it, yeah.
Page 4. Probably didn't get pulled over.
Maybe it didn't get pulled over. We'll look into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll look at that. That brings up a good point on this, Mayor. This is a draft document.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, there'll be changes, and not just like this, but there'll be changes as we progress through the process. And as those come up, obviously, we'll come back to you. This we consider as a done document, but as we keep going through the process, there'll be changes.
Same question could be asked for 59, depreciation and amortization. That was.
Yeah, depreciation and amortization is what Kansas calls a non-budgeted item. That you can see it's in the actuals only. What those are audit entries to actually record depreciation in your enterprise funds, and without actually having make you accountant. Commercial entities, businesses are used to having assets and depreciation that goes with those assets. Local government has got to be completely different in that sometimes you have depreciation, sometimes you don't. In this case, you do because you've got enterprise funds that are commercial-like, if you will. So that's what those are. What we don't do is budget that depreciation. What you do is whenever you account for your rates or any rate changes, you include either cash reserves or depreciation within that rate structure. So with Kansas, we don't account for it, but it's counted for everywhere else.
So it's always in arrears
Yes.
as part of the budget, as part of the
Yeah.
audit doc.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So that's the total budget here. And then the next page starts the fund summaries. Each one of the funds that you see on that first page has got a page here. These are all set up very similar. The first one is the general fund. I want to focus on that dark blue block for right now. The beginning fund balance is an estimated beginning fund balance. When I say fund balance, it's synonymous with cash balance. So the beginning cash balance or fund balance here on this page, $7 million is an estimate, just like the other ones were. That's if we spent the entire 2026 budget and only received what was budgeted. The surplus deficit is a plan to spend down, and you can see 2 lines below that surplus deficit in that dark blue block. It shows the ending fund balance as a percentage of expenses. And what that does is help you see what that benchmark is. 4 million is not going to mean, 4.9 million won't mean a whole lot to anybody unless it's benchmarked. And this is something that staff brought up that could get added to here to give you more information. In this case, that target is 17% at the end of 27. More than likely, it'll be 20, higher than what we had planned, but that's just because of the way people spend or the cities spend money. So 17% is still a healthy balance. When I say that, I'm really thinking of an investor standpoint. You guys issue bonds and get rated each time you do. And one of the things they look at is cash balances. They'll look at deficits, and what they'll ask is, was that a planned expense? Yes, it's a planned expense. And largely for capital. What they'll do is they'll take that out of the numbers and won't count that against the city at all. It's a planned spend down. But you've got a policy and a strong policy, and you balance to that policy. And that means a lot. That means more than really the fluctuation in the numbers. So that's...
And just as a reminder, sorry, Ben.
Yeah, go ahead.
That policy for our fund balance in general is 15%.
Right.
Right. So that's the general fund. Again, you can see personnel services are your biggest expense, that line 50. And it's going to be that way unless you have a big slug of capital coming through. The taxes that are split between sales tax and property tax, sales tax for 2026's budget is actually lower than what we actually received in 25. So anytime we look at sales tax budget for 27, we'll take into account what that 2025 actuals look like, and won't be growing it off of the 26, it'll be off the actuals. So you'll see, if you see the detail, the sales tax may look like it's an 11% increase over 26 budget. Well, it might be because you're coming in a lot higher than what you had expected to come in, which is a positive move. The last type of form that we've got in here is the next page. And what this is all the departments throughout the entire city. And it's summarized just like the funds are. So you can see what the movement in those expenses have been in the budget, what it looks like. The one at the top, I've got a caveat. Not applicable really means anything that doesn't fit in a department. And it's usually, what it's usually called is general services. And that would be, in this case, it's largely debt. Any kind of debt, your bond and interest payments, nobody really owns those but finance. So finance is the ones, or city manager's office, make sure that that's getting budgeted right. That personnel services actually costs that are in CVB, I believe. But the rest of them, you can kind of see the next few pages will go through, each one of the departments with the three big ones at the top. That's fire, police, and part of public works, which is just engineering in this case. Engineering, streets, parks is in the page after the, what page is that? Page 7. So that'll show you what the movement has been on each one of the departments. And this is the way your finance system breaks it down. It makes a lot of sense to me when we put this together.
Can we
what
go back,
goes where.
back on 6?
Yep.
IT, 27 shows almost $1 million in commodities and supplies. Is that where we're talking about bringing IT back to,
Yeah, that's
from
exactly it.
the departments
Yeah.
back to bulk purchasing managed?
And also just accounting, most of that's actually in accounting for software. So we had been breaking up everybody's, say, Windows 365 licenses, made it very difficult to manage. So they are now in one area. So the total amount spent is only growing by the cost of the actual item, but it's just, again, accounting for it all in one spot and not diffusing it over each individual department budget.
So is that going to remain a sunk department, or are you going to take transfers from all the other departments to offset it?
So we had already in our MER transfers, we had a history of transferring from the utilities into the IT MER, but then we were also having the utilities pay their own IT. So this more trues that up.
Okay. Thank you.
So when you flip past the department expenses, I believe it's page 11. I won't walk through each one of these pages just because I know we have more to do this morning than walk through numbers. It would kind of numb my mind too. But we do the same thing. All the other funds, I believe, is 5% fund balance.
Outside of utilities.
Outside of utilities, right. So utilities are in here too. Utilities is not a percentage, it's a number of days cash on hand. So what that means is how long could you, if revenue shuts off in the utility, how long can you run it without that revenue? How much cash do you have to run it? And that'll be in here too as you go through it. Hopefully this makes sense. When we put these together, we try to think of not just you guys, but if constituents actually want to look up something like this, and I do, unfortunately, for Olathe all the time, it hopefully makes sense. Budget being one of the biggest policy documents of the year, we try to get this, by the time we adopt it, we've got it centered around your strategic priorities, and a much bigger book comes out than this. This is really just the core draft of the numbers. What we'll work on for one of the next meetings is adding more meat to this. You'll see FTEs and a number of different things, maybe a little bit of analysis on certain revenues and why we budgeted the way we did, especially property tax and sales tax. It'll answer some of those questions. I think that's what I've got for the book. Anything else you think I need to go over?
I know that we talked about going over some of these fund balances starting here on page 11. If we wanted to just show where. Excuse me, sorry.
Do you want, I'm sorry. Okay. We'll quickly go over some of these fund balances just to give you an idea of where the fund currently sits. I know that we're throwing a lot at you. Maybe just take this opportunity to ask any question that you may have, because when we do present you a deficit budget, like Ben mentioned at the beginning of his presentation, knowing that cash or that fund balance will help you understand that there are times when having an unbalanced budget is okay, because the fund is in a healthy state. So for example, our airport is ended at about $55,000 last year. This fund is pretty much in a revenue expense even fund. What comes in gets spent out. And when I say it gets spent, it either gets spent in payment outside of the city, or it gets transferred to a MER or a CIP. So we had a conversation about this with the county. We're working on figuring out what the need is in the near future and asking the county to increase their match into this fund to allow this fund to have a little bit of cash. We mentioned 5% is kind of a policy, an internal guideline, if you will, and this is a $2 million budget with a $50,000 cash balance. So we really want to, we'd like to, we don't need to, we would like to increase that cash
And just to clarify, we're actually budgeting a negative cash balance. So this is a budget we still have work to do to shore up.
Oh, I gotcha. Yep.
We ended with about our 5%, but looking forward, this will be a budget that requires some
Good point.
adjustments.
So in this example, because ending fund balance is negative, we don't have cash in this fund to pull from. So this one will have to be balanced. This one can't pull from cash reserves. The library, as you know, is not under your the decision to increase or change the mill levy happens at the library board level, then it comes to us. I believe we have some authority that caps what they do, but I'm not quite sure that we have the authority. Maybe I ask Chris. Chris, do you know, do we have the authority to say you can't? Yeah. So for my experiences, you can say, this is the cap, and you can cap it. I think I want to say 6 mils, but they have let us know last night that they will be increasing their mill levy. So they will be taking the full increase assessed valuation and increasing by a little bit. And the reason Carrie shared with me was because of what might be happening in the next year and the lack of flexibility they will have in taking assessed valuation or having the cash they need to sustain that new facility they have. So they're taking a very conservative approach. So that means, I believe, that since they are exceeding revenue neutral and they are increasing the budget, then I believe that means we must exceed
revenue neutral.
Exceed revenue neutral rate. Yeah. It doesn't mean we have to. The library can, but we have to actually go through that process so as to let the public know that the overall mill levy for the city, which includes the library's mill levy, will exceed revenue neutral rate.
Which just means we're going to have to contemplate accepting more of that increased valuation money.
Yes, but it doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Understand.
Okay.
And just to back up a little bit, the IT is an actual category. So it's category for all the other budgets. And when you combine it into one department, it's actually embedded in personal services, contractual commodities. So there should be zero in that IT. But that's a good eye on that.
Okay,
I think the only other ones I would mention is when we get to our utilities on page 14, to see where our budgets, you'll notice sanitation, what we call solid waste, has 132 days plus in right now the way we budgeted for operating expense. So that's above our 90 days. Wastewater is coming out a little under our 90-day reserve policy. It's 50 days. But then water is back up to 110 days. So just things that we'll be looking at while we make any sort of adjustments.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm looking to see if there's anything on here that might be worth a conversation. Some of these funds, as you're probably wondering, like I've never seen this one before. Some of these are smaller funds that are pass-throughs.
This will be the first year for the rail fund.
Yeah, first year for the rail fund.
That's in page 15 at the bottom.
We have a special park and rec fund that brings in, I believe, a third of alcohol revenue that comes into the city, and that's transferred for park-related purchases. And we don't really talk about that because it's sweeped or it's used for park expenses, but that is a little bucket, if you will. Yeah. We'll give you time to go through this, and if you have any questions, please bring them back to the next work session. At the end of this presentation, we'll take sort of a list, if you will, of the information that you'd like for us to come back with, now knowing what you picked up from yesterday and today. So, okay, I'll keep going. Alrighty. So now let's talk about 2027 and the enhancements, if you will, the program changes or enhancements. If you recall, yesterday we talked about the direction to staff that was given a couple of months ago in relation to keeping a flat budget. Because people are our greatest asset and people are the reason why we're able to provide the services that we do offer, we did not say all personnel additions are off the table. We still need and want to talk about the needs and wants of our organization and how they fit into the overall picture so as to make a decision to whether or not figure out a way to fund or put off a year or say not at this time. So these requests came through the leadership team, and I'm going to mention one error. The CVB General Fund Main Street Coordinator estimated cost is $85,649, not $50,760. That position is split, and the benefits, I didn't pick up the benefit portion on that total. So the management analyst, the code enforcement officer, and the CVB Main Street Coordinator should all be $85,649. That is personnel wages and benefits. And that would be benefit estimate if they took the best plan and all that jazz. We always budget the max. So let's start off with admin, the management analyst. And I'll ask Rebecca to add a little bit on that front because she's been here and has seen the transition in administration. And all of you have seen the transition in administration. Over the past, 10 to 15 years, administration has ebbed and flowed as far as staffing. I'm sure you all remember that at one point we had one city manager and two assistant city managers. That transition kind of ebbed and then it was decreased. And then at one point, I believe we increased through the addition of a management analyst. That management analyst did awesome and great work for a couple years. And that through that management analyst transition out of the organization, we didn't know what we were going to do with that position. We decided because of the direction from a strategic viewpoint of this commission a couple years ago that trust could be improved. And we thought, well, what better way than by engaging with the community through this open position. At the time, I was just starting in the management analyst position. We were trying to figure out what exactly they would be doing because my strong suit was finance and the management analyst was doing a lot of finance work. And so instead of just filling it, we said, let's hold it, transition it to to what Sarah is today. And we're very thankful for Sarah and we want to keep Sarah. That being said, 2.5 years in, realizing the management analyst position was a key part of this department. I wholeheartedly understand if this may not be the year to fill a position for administration as far as the management analyst, but I wanted to put it in front of your eyes so you have an understanding that we are growing, the department is growing, and that position could be flexed, could be molded to fill some needs that we're currently seeing. Now, I also know that we don't have a finance director, and that has put a lot of pressure on staff. And Ben has been incredibly grateful. This is going to be a more in-depth conversation in the next month to see if this is the right time, whether we proceed with an actual ask so that you can give us a yes or a no or more information, or if we're actually going to take it off. But I wanted to put it in front of your eyes so you understand and see that the department is growing, the needs are growing, and that capacity is declining. And I'll let Rebecca talk a little bit about it.
Sure. And just to be clear, what's on this slide is not baked into your budget.
Yeah, this is
These
not
are
included.
in addition to what you've already seen. When we had that management analyst position, we've had a lot of strong employees throughout the years that had certain strengths, especially in grant management, grant writing, being able to do analysis, being able to pick up that project that doesn't really fit anywhere, which in municipal government we seem to get a lot of, and being very flexible. And we were, like Daniela said, it was really, really great to have that person that could kind of, pinch hit for us. Moving towards fulfilling what was in what's still current strategic plan of filling those marketing and communication needs was absolutely vital. You can't use the same tool for a different job. However, as Daniela and I both know, how much time we're spending on the ground in projects, it's probably not a sustainable model for too much longer in the future. I would also say that we're doing this not just putting out a position and seeing what fits, but we're doing internal analysis as well of not just our duties, but others, and seeing, what would this really look like? Not just a vague thing, but where really is that need, and what kind of skill set and what kind of opportunities are there to be able to fill that. We have utilized, in the interim, we have utilized some very short-term interns from Bethel. Those have been helpful. What we have noticed is that what we're looking for is a much higher level of work than we can get from an intern, and probably that more sustained knowledge base, not just a 6-week project or an 8-week project that needs oversight. We're looking for a little bit more of independent work, analysis, project management. So,
also something to add. Again, we're currently in the middle of analyzing the analyst position, and whether or not it's the right time. Part of that has been actually it's been fun. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's been interesting and exciting to see the delegation part. I mean, we're having to let go of things. We can't do all of it, and we're either saying, is this a priority? If not, is later okay? And if later's okay, we're putting it on the list. But if it it has to happen today. We've been spreading that love with our team more, and our team has stepped up. I mean, we're finding that we have very capable, very intelligent, very servant leader staff, which has been incredible. It's part of the succession planning process. Also, with your direction, and I'm saying that I'm setting up the next few asks as well with this comment. You have asked, when you can't do more with less, you're going to have to do less with less, and that's essentially what we're saying is, if you decide, not me, if you decide that this is not the right time, we will come back and tell you, okay, then as the years go by, when we do reach that capacity, we will come to you and say, okay, not the platinum, but maybe the gold, maybe the silver, whatever it may be. I hope not, but that'll be the new narrative. What can we set aside, or what can we stop doing if we don't need to do it, or what can we do more effectively? So I want you to know a lot of thought and a lot of looking into these positions is happening so that it's not just, oh, let's just add a position because we have a project here or there. So don't have a lot of details for you right now, but if we do keep this, you will know by the next meeting. Is that, any questions? I know that's kind of high level.
I guess I'm just sitting here thinking, so are these projects that are non-development related? Because I think of Zach in projects. I think of projects, I think of Zach and development. And so are you talking about non-development related projects? Just
But I think it's both. Being a part of those processes, and so previously, the oversight of departments was spread out by 3 individuals. So 10, 12 department heads, 3 individuals oversaw departments. That has now shifted to 1 person overseeing 12 departments. That direct reporting is now to me and not to 3 other individuals. And so oversight, so it's not necessarily oversight. I get where you're going. So the oversight piece takes a lot of time. Leading, not managing and leading, it takes time. So my output, I would say, is not necessarily increasing. I'm not putting out more reports, but the oversight piece I'm finding over the last 2.5 years takes a lot of time, which doesn't allow for the output piece. But this job is, in my opinion, a position that is not just a leading piece. It's a working on things piece. And so that being said, the support of another staff member to do the hands-on stuff so as to allow more time for me to, there's a saying, if you're working in your business, you're not working on your business. And that strategy and that visioning is not happening because I'm looking at GLs and you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Like a great lawyer has some really great paralegals underneath
sure,
them. You know,
sure.
that tee things up so that they can do the law, the big work. You know.
Yeah.
So
That.
I guess my question is we've also talked about how growth and development has put stresses on engineering, code, permitting, all of that and everything, and that continued growth is going to continue to do that.
Sure.
Is this position providing any relief or any delegation of those responsibilities to help streamline that? Because we've had a barrier to development in some of those offices, and I know staff has worked really well to tear down those barriers, and it's shown.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to
Thank
make
you.
sure that
Thank you.
we're moving forward.
Yes. So when I say we, when we started looking at bringing back this position, there are department heads that come to me and say, I don't have capacity to do this. Is this a priority, or can I put this down on the list? In Public Works, there has been a lot of transition, and through that transition is learning, which means capacity can be limited. With that comes that support of, okay, I'm now gonna give you, or I'm gonna delegate some of that work. Some of those projects have gone down the list, and I'll let Ed speak for himself. Those projects we support now as a team. Instead of it just being a Public Works department, it's a leadership project, and that support is dwindling down at the momentum that we're going. So if it is okay to slow down, it's almost just giving us permission to, if that needs to go down the list, then it needs to go down the list, and we're okay with that. So we're asking for direction, maybe not today, but in the next month, direction on, there may be projects that we will have to just table because we just don't have the capacity. And that can be okay. We don't have to always go. Since I've started, and I've heard that this started before with the development, it has been go. And I'll leave it, I hope I'm not sounding like I'm complaining. This is not a complaint at all. This is just a gap that I'm seeing that
It's a safe place here.
it's it's not a complaint. It's more of a just sharing with you that there is an opportunity to bring an additional staff member, but in a very strategic way, because this originally started as a budget analyst. The budget, a lot of the requests that come from commission, from residents, from staff is, how can I make this work? Because finances are half of it. And so that analyzing, Donna didn't always have the capacity for it. The finance department is currently in that flux, right? And so that's what the management analyst did before. She was management budget analyst. So now Rebecca or I are having to do that. We have Ben too. He's a contract and we pay him for that. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, if that can't be done today and it can't be done tomorrow, it'll just have to wait, and that can be okay. We just want you to know that.
Okay.
The advantage of the contract is you get Ben and his bench of people.
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
we do.
so
You're right. That's completely another option.
And I would just jump in to add that when you talk about the development and engineering, and you're right, they are so integrated. The two sides of this building don't operate at all in silos. We are, by the time I came in the office early this morning, Ed was already on our side of the building, helping out, pitch hitting. The closeness that we work together, we probably spend 3/4 of our time together, working on projects simultaneously. The touch points are continual. Every single project needs to come back and forth. And again, an analyst wouldn't necessarily do the project, but they would tee it up. Mm-hmm. They would prep it for a review, a higher level review. They would help put those reminders out. We've had a lot of requests now, especially in growth, for more grants, and those are time intensive. Yeah. And then tracking them is time intensive. And that is certainly a place where, whether those grants come from engineering for large industrial or manufacturing or infrastructure or whatever that grant might be, or whether it's a smaller grant that we're doing to, do a little bit of zhuzhing up in the downtown, whatever that is, we don't have a place for that right now. And so that's landing on Daniela's and my desk. And it just kind of adds to that pile. And so
I didn't explain. So what we're doing is a process that was given to us by a leadership coach that is called, we're doing a responsibility matrix or job matrix, and what is managing and what is leading, and we're looking where that intersect is with staff that are at capacity. We're not quite done yet, but what that's done is shown us how much time we are touching projects, not necessarily doing projects. So for example, on a call with, I'm trying to think of going from budget and then jumping on a call to talk about Themian Park, because that's still going on, believe it or not. We still meet monthly. And oh, by the way, the NRC wants to talk about how to fund, a lot of these are finance things, but how to fund X, and I need public works director and city manager. And then it's NRC, housing authority, someone wants to talk to us about housing authority. And not necessarily related to city manager strategy and looking ahead and the managing and leading of my core team, but it's sort of the external stuff that comes across our desk that it's like, you should know, you should be a part of, you should talk to. And that has to happen. That has to happen at this level. It has to happen at what I would say my leadership team and me, which means less time and capacity to do the, hey, can you read this 300-page comp plan, just to make sure that it's in line with what you're thinking. Hey, can you find a time with 7 people to figure out when we can meet on a calendar, which takes a lot of time. I'm trying to become more technology savvy on calendaring. But anyways, I think I've beat that horse to death. We're going through this process, and it's been a pretty neat way to put on paper where we are prioritizing our time and maybe where we shouldn't be prioritizing our time. Also, where we're doubling up and tripling up, what I'm finding is, oh, you're doing that too? Should I be doing that? Maybe it doesn't take two. I mean, I always love to have a team member beside me when we're, going to a meeting or representing the city, but with limited capacity, that's not always the case. So we're currently doing that. I just want you to know that that's something we're working very hard on, so we come to you informed and solid and confident in our ask. So with that, the next ask is fire EMS. I'm going to ask Chief, he's here, if he'd like to jump in on this ask. So I know that the fire EMS department has hit limited capacity over some time, and they came to City Commission in the last 5-6 years to ask for additional staffing. They asked for 6 staff. The City Commission allowed 3, gave 3. And so this ask is essentially the true up of that ask. I will let Chief to talk. I'd like, Chief, if I may, could you talk about what minimum staffing is, what your current struggle with minimum staffing is, NFPA, and why we follow NFPA and how it molds into this, and how the county funding ask also blends into this.
Okay. I'm trying to make a checklist of to-dos that you asked me to address. So if I miss something, holler.
If you, and I can send it to your personnel ask form. Most of it is in there, so, okay.
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 So yes, if you'll recall, in 2023, we came forward and requested the addition of 6 personnel to address the increasing demands of service requests, staffing, the elevation of staffing recommendations through NFPA, and et cetera. At that time, that was a huge ask, and the commission at the time graciously approved 3 of the 6 requested. So we eventually filled those 3, and we've been able to keep up with the current demands as it is so far, albeit that we're falling short of the NFPA recommendation for minimum staffing requirements or recommendations. So we're coming forward again this year to request 3 personnel. This is all in an effort to continue to address our ever-increasing demands for service. It used to be we would respond to fires and emergency medical service calls. Now we're responsible for injury accidents, we're responsible for hazmat, for confined space, for if we're the Swiss Army knife of pre-hospital emergent situations, along with our partners in blue with law enforcement. They're called for all kinds of stuff that don't typically fit in the box either. So with that said, minimum staffing for us is 12 personnel per shift in a 24-hour period. When we don't meet that minimum staffing level, we need to call people back in to fill those, to get us to that minimum level. We've had extended leaves for various reasons. The staffing models, some of them suggest, a 3-quarter rule, so you have to have 4 people to have 3 full-time, all the way through to compensate for the earned leave and et cetera. So we're trying to address that need, as well as make sure that we have people available to respond to emergency situations, as well as continue to ensure the safety of our responders. What we do is not the typical, but we need to do it as safely as we possibly can. So, and doing that, we need to make sure that we're taking care of the ones that we have. You've heard that before from different members of staff, that it's important that they're good when they come to us, and we take care of them while they're here, and then when they're done, that when they leave, they're they're okay too. So we don't burn them out. We don't cause other behavioral health issues to arise along the way. NFPA recommendation is, it depends on the size of the structure, but for a single-family dwelling, NFPA recommends 16 personnel on a first alarm response, and we don't. 16 is our current shift staffing, and that's full staffed. So we're augmenting those numbers with administrative personnel that are also responding to those higher acuity calls, but the idea is that you get more boots on the ground quick and mitigate the hazard in a very timely manner. Thus far, it's been hit and miss. So we rely heavily on our auto aid partners in the county, and they rely on us. So we're trying to cover each other along the way to ensure that we're providing the services in a safe and efficient manner. To that end, as Daniela mentioned, the county, I've been meeting with other providers in the county, EMS providers in the county, and presenting to the county commission. Part of that ask was for additional funding of the dollars that they had been providing in addition to the annual distribution. My intent is not to double dip to where we get an increase through the city of Newton and also an increase through the county. My intent in our increased funding through the county is to offset some of the burden that is on the taxpayers of the city of Newton. So I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know where they're going to land. But it would negate part of the expense of, or offset, I guess I should say, some of that expense. Other questions? Or any question?
Bueller.
Okay. Code enforcement. This next ask is at what we believe, and we could confirm this today, is at the direction of this commission in the last 12 months in conversations and talking about nuisance abatement. I believe there's been a request to bring back the addition of a code enforcement officer. So the increased capacity to be proactive on code enforcement, coupled with an overlap perhaps of succession planning, because one person does the job in the city, so that could be an opportunity to do some training and have a backup. So I'll let Ed talk about that one a little bit.
Sure, thank you. So we've visited about this on multiple different occasions. So currently our code enforcement officer, Jerry Lewis, does a great job, but he's one man, and we're trying to do code enforcement on more of a reactive versus a proactive basis, which isn't always a bad thing. But if we want to try and hit things a little harder, I think it would be good to have another code enforcement officer that we could formulate a plan to be more reactive versus proactive, instead of waiting for a complaint to come in and then going out and doing, a block radius of that complaint. What we could do is start picking areas of town that we know are problematic and having one of those code enforcement officers going out and taking care of that more proactively rather than waiting for a complaint doing it. The other thing that I would also mention is that Jerry, I think, is within a couple years of retirement. Jerry's been with us a long time. That's very unusual for that position. Generally, a code enforcement officer, 4 to 6 years is because it's a lot. There's a lot of pressure, and just kind of the back and forth of that. The stress of that job is pretty tough. So I think it would be good to be able to do that as a way of letting Jerry train the next individuals coming up in the organization. The other thing I would mention is we put out an RFP for abatement of weeds. We got we have no bids on it. So Danielle and I have sat down, come up with a plan. We've involved our park staff in it. We're moving towards more of we're going to make it a different priority so that it's getting done. I don't know if you want me to speak to this much more.
Yeah.
In order to do that, we're going to want to purchase another mower. We're going to want to hire 2 seasonal folks, which is kind of already planned, already budgeted because they're seasonal. And their focus will be abatements. So they would have a mower and the equipment to go do the abatements. We'd look at them every day, and 1 or 2 days a week, that's all they did was abatements. Then when they weren't doing abatements, we would put them on and help in other areas of the park. So that's kind of where we're going today, to try and help prioritize abatements. But looking to the future, I know those aren't exactly the same thing, but they tie together. Looking to the future of having an additional code enforcement officer. I think we're a big enough city. We have enough things that go on that we could certainly use 2 code enforcement officers.
If I'm going to add a little bit to that. It's been about a year since we last talked about this. We think we did an update about a year ago. And I know that we haven't talked since then much about this process, but this last year has been kind of a learning year. We took the request to be more proactive and came up with Plan A. Plan A was, how can we work this in within capacity? And so we gave that time. After some time, we realized we can't work this in. There's additional things that need to be done that are higher on the list. Well, the abatements still have to happen. That led to Plan B, which is let's contract it out, which is what Ed is talking about. We weren't successful in that realm. So that then in turn led to Plan C, which is we can't work it in. We're finding we can't work it in. We're finding we can't hire anybody. So now we're going to kind of do both. We're going to hire the capacity, create our own abatement team like we were going to hire, and mold it into our budget. It took some moving money around. It took some, let's give this a shot and see if it works. And so that's where we're at on abatements, because I know all of you get complaints about an abatement, taking weeks to get abated. So that is currently a process that we're working through. The code enforcement piece is a separate piece. It would, like Ed said, because we would be proactive, it would allow us also to not necessarily go the enforcement route, but to go the compliance route. So we would double our capacity to say, oh, this is at 8 inches. I forget is it 12 inches?
12.
Okay. This is at 8 inches or 9 inches. It's very much a balancing game, because you don't want people to think that you're watching them to meet that 12, to get to that 12 inches, and you don't want to give them something at 11 and a half, because once it's at 12, it's high. And so, but if you have the capacity, you could do a courtesy notice. Hey, you have a couple days before you actually get this letter, so you got 40. Anything that starts off as a conversation without you get the letter. Which could benefit that, which could really benefit Jerry, I think, because he wouldn't always be the bad guy sending the letter. So anyways, I don't know if we would like some direction probably by the next meeting of whether or not you would like to implement that additional code enforcement officer.
I want to continue our fight against blight, and I mean, I messaged you a couple times, and there was a property that was vacant due to a death, and then it was not quite tall enough, and then the ticket got automatically closed, and then 2 days later, it's 13 inches, and
But the rain didn't help.
And rain didn't help, and all of that and everything. So, I mean, additional resources could help and everything. My question would be, if we know that there's going to be a change down the road, do we take all the options off the table by adding another position now, or do we consider outsourcing all of code enforcement?
That's an option. It is always an option. Outsourcing is always.
So I mean, I would like to know how that looks before we make the decision on adding a second position on there of outsourced code enforcement with abatement. I mean, because you can get a whole package.
And you're not saying outsourcing code enforcement officers?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's an idea. New to me.
How does,
I always come up with crazy.
Yeah, no, no, that's great. I love it.
how does this abatement thing work then that you're talking about using the seasonal? Is there direction, okay, you need to go to such and such properties because, how do they know? How's that determined since?
Sure. So the way it currently works is a report will be filed through a CELA or however that report happens. Jerry sends out a letter, lets them know they have 10 days to comply. No, they don't comply in 10 days, we send out a second letter and say you have 5 days to comply. They don't comply, we send it to Park. Park then goes out and they mow it, but they generally don't mow it until they're in that area. So
Okay.
we want to keep our own house in order too and not be out of compliance. So we work very hard to make sure that if we're mowing on the south end of town and we have a non-compliant on the north end of town, it may be a day or two before we get back to the north end of town, because we don't want to just pull a mower off to go do that. So the abatement that we're talking about, we would have a dedicated crew, seasonal crew of 2 people. They'd have their own mower, they'd have their own weed eater, truck, trailer. Every day we'd go in, we'd get the tickets that have been submitted, and then we would go out and mow those. Or we'd pick, 2 days a week, if there's one, and we can get 2 of them done in 2, you know what I'm saying? Like we would prioritize those a little bit more, so that crew they have their marching orders every day. And that's to go out and abate. And if there's no abatements that day, then they're going to go help on other tasks with the park division.
So on the letters, they have a 10-day and then they have a 5-day halfway in between. Is that?
That's one time a year. And then after that, they immediately get sent to park. So if you have a property and we've sent you a letter on 2 separate, on the first letter, and then we send a final letter, and then a month later they're in the same predicament, we don't send another letter. They immediately go to park.
So do we have to send that 5-day letter? I mean, do we have to
Chris,
send
do we
it?
have to do that for legal?
I don't know if it's in code or is a courtesy.
I think it's a courtesy. I think the 5 days a courtesy. The second letter.
It's like a final warning.
Yeah.
With the thought maybe being, obviously we'd rather them mow it than us
Right.
mow in a sense.
Right.
So I guess that's why it's built in. I can tell you if it's required or not though.
So because of that, then you have that, sounds like somewhat additional time waiting, and then by then, it's probably up to 1.5 feet.
Right, but that's just on the first one. So if they're habitual and it happens every month, they're not getting 2 letters. They don't even get they don't get a letter at all the second time. It goes directly to park.
Okay.
But is it still complaint? Still somebody would have to report it again?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yesterday, as an example, they sent out 13 second letters that are giving those people 5 days to mow. And of those 13, if they don't comply, that's 13 that's going to the park.
But then if it happens again, of those 13 people, happens again in a month from now, it goes directly to park. We don't send other additional letters.
Okay.
And so that's why I mentioned the code enforcement hiring is one piece and the abatement is is another piece. The letter would get, the abatement would get quicker, would go to parks a lot quicker than it had the first time.
Right.
The second time, the issue we'd have is because of capacity, it still wasn't mowed right away. So it went faster from Jerry's office to Parks, but it still sat because our staff was at capacity.
Right.
Need a
And so
giant
we've
flag to put in those yards that says, "Yeah, we know." we're
Yeah,
on."
I know.
So I do have a question on Rich's option of contracting a code enforcement. When I think of that, I think of not full-time. Is that what, I mean, because it's not a
Maybe.
staff member, but for a community of 18,500 plus, why would we not have 2 full-time people? We have enough issues in this community always, at any given time, for that. So would a contract person be
We'd
for
have to,
certain times?
Well, it's a contract company, so they would apply the amount of effort that we would contract for. So if we contracted for X number of zones to be done per week or X number of areas to be checked, they would apply the effort and then they would bill us accordingly in the agreement and everything. So I'm not setting that it's one person. I'm not setting that it's a contractor, singular person. I'm saying, is there a company out there that can provide this service to us in this opportunity of change at a price that benefits our taxpayers and gives us a level of service that we want? That's all my question is.
Okay, so if a contract company comes back and says, we see this, this, and this in this zone, who does the work then? I mean, they are really recommending.
It's dependent on how we devise the agreement. We could have them also have abatement professionals already teed up that they would utilize to make that abatement happen, or it could be a partnership to where they get it all through code and everything, and then it goes to parks. I mean, it's just dependent on how we design it. Do we want to outsource all of it? Do we want to outsource any of it? I just want to ask the question.
Okay,
it's worth looking into.
okay.
We can absolutely do that. We have, and maybe Ed can speak a little bit about this, at least the complaints that come across my desk on parking enforcement. And I know that the police department has bigger fish to fry, if you will. And so parking enforcement is done almost as, hey, can you move your car? Or, rather than I'm going to write you a ticket or and we used to have a parking enforcement officer that actually issued tickets, but we're not really doing that. So the idea was perhaps this additional code enforcement officer could maybe, and we're working with Chris on this, on issuing those citations, whether it's a parking citation or it's a citation for parking in your grass, so as to not necessarily involve the police department every time we need something to, we need a action on something, and not just send it to court, which in turn gives them another X amount of days, which may or may not lead to a fine, and then we're kind of back in the same boat. We're looking at all of this. So the thought behind hiring someone for capacity would mean being proactive on additional things that we're kind of just working through it. I don't know. Is that fair?
That's
Just working
fair.
through it. Yeah. Okay. And last but not least, CVB. CVB Main Street Coordinator. I threw that title in there, but we're not quite sure what that position would look like. I will let Rebecca oversee CVB, and she will talk a little bit about that position.
Sure. So a little bit of history, as you all remember. Not that many years ago, we just had a full-time CVB person, and our transient guest tax fund really could not support, at that time, a full salary. We also looked at your direction about what could be if we had to make it more efficient and effective. And we chose to bring it down to a half of a person doing CVB and funding the rest of it through admin. And it was the beginning of our Main Street program. That's been working pretty well for the last few years, but as events continue to happen and as we continue to grow both our Main Street and our external events, CVB in a community our size, that those visitors, they might not look like your visitors to a big city. They're going to be coming for our local events, for our agritourism. They're coming to the pumpkin patch. They're coming to Taste of Newton. They're coming to those things that are local, downtown. So the two positions work really, really well together. So when we analyzed it a little bit, it definitely feels like we have enough for two people. Again, all the specifics haven't been really hashed out or worked out. I know that Jen met on Monday with Main Street America for the transformational strategies. So one of my goals was after she got through this week, we would kind of sit down and even have some more conversations about their interpretation of direction to move forward for our program, but also to be able to give that extra assistance for the actual tourism piece to be able to do that. So that's how this is in there, split. Again, Daniela updated the numbers to you verbally about around the 86,000 range when you add benefits in. This would just, again, be another hands-on deck to be able to continue to do those efforts that bring people to our community. Like I said, they're usually more day trips or short, maybe 2-day trips if they're connecting with the Meridian Center. So we don't get people that, we're not talking week-long vacationers, but we definitely do get a good amount of tourism. And with our Placer AI data, we've seen that and seen how large those numbers really are. So we definitely feel like there's need. Again, if the direction is to continue to grow those programs. Otherwise, we will have to continue to not add additional programming.
And Jen's, how's hers? Is hers,
She's a 50-50 split.
okay, Jen's is 50-50.
Right now, if you look at the fund is doing very well in CVB. And we are expecting to have a little bit of maneuverability in the transient guest tax because there is the bond that pays the Meridian Center, and a portion of that comes out of there as a direct transfer. That bond will be retiring here in the near future.
Shows CVB 8,000 under for 27.
That's in revenue and expenses, but if you look at the cash balance is substantially higher. Cash balance should be about 360,000.
316
Okay.
is revenue.
You are on page 12, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, if you see the ending fund balance is 380,281.
So you're going to deficit spend down
We
the
will-
cash balance.
We were planning an
So-
$8,000 deficit
Right.
spending.
And this isn't in there, so that would be
Larger deficit spending.
$92,000 deficit spending. So you could sustain that position.
Until the
this
bond,
rate.
retired, yes. And then, again, that bond retirement amount is usually about $140,000 a year that comes out. It's almost half of our transient guest tax.
That fund balance could sustain this position without any increase to our taxpayer.
Oh, yeah, good question. If it was
Ultimately,
all
when that-
paid out
If
of
it was all paid out?
CBB?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when
That's
does
another-
when does that pay out?
I'm going to say 2030, 2031. If you give me a second, I can look that up.
It's within the next 5 years. Yep.
Now we just need to find money and fire to do the same thing.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, now Rebecca's going to go over some of the budget priorities and the programs. These will come back to you in formal form through the strategic plan in the coming weeks. But these are just some highlights so that they're on your radar of what's baked into the budget.
Sure. Some of these things we already talked about yesterday, so we're going to not spend too much time. We have both of our studies for both public works and public safety, again, to be able to get us a good baseline approach. That implementation of that rail utility, again, is going to be a big thing that you're seeing that's new. One thing that is included is a continuation of our Independence Day fireworks celebration. We went ahead and put that number in there. It is in the CVB budget to fund the fireworks at the same amount that they were last year, $25,000. As you see, that brings us to that $8,000 deficit. But from the feedback we're getting so far, and we'll know more in a few weeks, we seem to be very, very positive, a lot of excitement around it. And this will be one of the first big events that the city is hosting. A lot of other cities our size do host multiple events through the year. This kind of goes to that growth of both of our public engagement and our CVB of just going back to hosting it. So that is in there. Completely open for discussion, but we wanted to plug it in. It continues those Choose Newton television ads that you see around when you're out and about doing things or at your home. It's not really necessarily a cost basis, but we do want to review all of our boards and commissions. About a year ago, Danielle and I went to a city manager summit, and we heard from a lot of other communities, including Wichita, including some up more like by the Kansas City area, that talk about doing a holistic review of all the boards and commissions that are under the city auspices. Because when we're looking at trying to be effective and efficient with our time, these are staffed by our city staff. The agendas are put together, and are these really making sense for what we do today? Sometimes you spin up a board because you got a great reason, and you find yourself 10 years later at the same board. And is that need still there? So they have a really good framework that they've utilized, and they've offered it to us. So this is on our list as a way, to, again, to balance those priorities so that we're utilizing our time most effectively. As you remember, part of the comprehensive plan is a new updated housing study. So in 2019, when you had your last housing study, same researcher that did it, what staff took out of that was a housing action plan and brought it to you. So we'd been working on that action plan actually up to this point. So with the new housing study, we will need to create another action plan and actually implement it. A study is only as good as the action plan that we put behind it. Otherwise, it's really heavy reading and doesn't actually have any results.
And I might add to that. I know Jason wasn't here last year, but starting last year, we started an annual housing report, and we typically give it in the summer. I say typically. Last year, we gave it in the summer. So this year, I know Zach is working on that housing update to kind of just give you an update of what's happened in the last 12 months. So,
okay.
And one more thing. This is just more of it's not every day when someone comes up to you and says, you know what, I really like that the city's doing this, and I just want you to know that how much I appreciate the staff or whoever thought of this. And it was the Choose Newton ads, the Choose Newton commercials on TV. And I don't know if you've seen them. Have you seen them on TV? Okay. My neighbor Cheryl came to me and said, hey, those really highlight what Newton is about. And it's nice to get that credit we deserve out on TV and see, look, Newton and its glory. And that was a good idea. Kudos to whoever thought of that. So I just wanted to share that it's not every day someone approaches me and says, hey, this was a good thing. So there are, I've received feedback from residents that the marketing efforts of the city outside of this community are not unseen.
I'm going to just add a quick thing because I got a chance to look it up. That bond retires in 2030. Okay, and then nuisance code review. Again, this is more of an internal piece that just followed on the conversation we all just had. I'm going to move on to an item that we said we would bring back to you today. And although Lisa isn't able to be here with us, she did some really great work last night for us and got us what you see before you on our credit card fees. So we'll walk through this information here a little bit. If you remember in our 24-25 year, those credit card fees had really crept up, as you can see, right around that 6%. She broke it out between the utility funds and the general funds and how many transactions, and it was costing, as you can see there, it cost us about $325,000 in total, the way she broke up that year. What you see now is actually a higher utilization rate, but through finance's negotiation of getting that fee per transaction down to closer to the 3%, we're currently spending about $260,000 on those fees, broken up between the utility funds and then the general fund. General funds are going to be those items like permits and licenses and sometimes court and things like that. So this was what was up for discussion, is if you wanted to forward on the cost of those fees at $260,000 or a portion of those fees back to the person utilizing that method of payment, or if you wanted to keep it. It's just something we wanted to bring before you so you could see that total cost.
I, for one, would certainly like to see us capture at least 1 mil out of those fees.
Okay.
I think we should be passing them on. I mean, as long as we have multiple ways that people can avoid those fees
Yes.
through ACH or paper check
Yep, of course.
or alternative payment methods.
This is simply a convenience we offer.
Yeah, I'm for passing that on. That's too much money in our budget.
Every other place that you go to and
Everywhere.
use a card, they don't give you a convenience pass.
No.
I'd like to also share, this change would have a direct impact on residents and also internally staff who take those payments. And so in conversations with them, I asked the gals downstairs, how would this affect you and what do you think about this change? Because they're the ones who deal with the complaints, my tax bills, or all of the complaints. And they generally, without knowing all the details, they agreed that even though they know the pushback they're going to get, they can stand behind, if you'd like to use that, if you'd like to have the convenience of paying with a credit card, this is the fee attached to it, and they can stand by that. So they were all generally supportive of that. So I just wanted to share with you.
That helps.
Yeah.
What, maybe somebody knows, something changed recently that allowed where payment companies are now encouraging businesses to have a cash price versus a credit card price. And it was something at the federal level that changed, I think. For a long time,
used to you could not charge
you
a
used to
fee.
not be able
Right.
to, and now
So
there's a.
now
So
there-
now I think it follows.
Right.
I support passing it on because I
It's been-
see it
it's been a
every
couple of years.
restaurant, everybody does it now.
And-
Okay. All right, back to things we said we were going to bring back to you yesterday. Here is our sales tax trends. Going to give you a little bit quick history in what kind of sales tax we get. The city does not have its own sales tax, but we do share in 2 of the 1-cent sales taxes that the county has, and they both have different big complicated figurines. And we're going to not go into that today, but we can if you want to another day. So what you see here is an aggregate of all that total sales tax that we get passed through for both county 1-cent sales tax and a year-over-year growth. And again, as you remember Ben talking about, that you were going to see that larger growth point in the over 11% in the proposed budget, and that's because we estimate the budget on the activity. And you see that the 2025 activity came in at 7.2 million. So I also have it, he put together a wonderful graph for us, so you can see it on there if you prefer the pictures to the numbers. But this is what we're looking at. When staff has gone and taken a larger look back, this is actually still under inflation. The numbers we're seeing in growth in sales tax is actually less than even inflation. So it's I would say it's modest growth. We didn't see big peaks during some of those higher inflation points that we've had since 2020. We are also not seeing the same peaks even that go year to year. So that's our quick analysis, but open to all conversations on this.
I got a question on sales tax.
Sure.
How handcuffed are we on the use of that sales tax revenue?
So that's a great question. So again, two separate 1-cent sales tax. The first one goes straight into the general fund. The second one gets split by the way that the vote was written. Half of it goes to the general fund. The other half goes to what we'll tackle maybe after our break here, that Economic Development Infrastructure Sales Tax Fund. And that was set aside specifically in that vote for that. So the general fund, the use of it is just general fund items, which as you see is majority of your, at least
So
your budget.
county the state's capped counties at 2%. Did they pull that cap off? I know they were talking about it, but they didn't remove it, right? Okay. So there's no way that there's going to be any sales tax. So if we wanted to, I'm just thinking, can we use that sales tax revenue to fund fire positions?
Well, we probably actually already are. So that's part of your revenues. So when you looked back, and we can go back and have that conversation, that is in your increased revenues. That's actually a great point. If we go back to your, let me go back to this budget book that Ben put together for us.
I mean, because if that's a market increase that we're looking at seeing,
Yeah, let's go back to page 5, if you would, on that budget book. So you have line 40, it says taxes. So just a little point of clarity. When we put this budget together, we kept the same dollar amount of your property tax, your ad valorem tax, as last year. Kept you at basically your revenue neutral rate. However, we did increase other things, including the sales tax, because that's not a point of vote. So in that taxes line, that includes that increased sales tax already. We also included, I got really great estimates from engineering on they thought fees and permits. We put in those utility amounts. So whatever we think the utilities are going to come in at, they're 5% for their pilot. So we did slightly move those, but we did actually increase those sales tax numbers already in here. So when you look at your 17% ending cash balance, that already has that increase in there. So if you were going to fund, say, those fire positions, you would see that fund balance decrease if we plugged those in here to general fund.
A way to, for me, actually comparing it to the fire EMS budget, I'm calling out one of our largest personnel lines, which is fire EMS.
Right.
The 2027 budget asked for fire EMS is $7.7 million.
Right.
The budget last year was $7 million, so that's an increase of $760,000. The increase of taxes on page 5 from 26 to 27 is $900,000. So fire EMS essentially is getting the full increase, almost the full increase of that entire tax increase, if that makes sense. If you, I mean, I really can't say that because the sales tax goes into the bucket and funds everyone.
Right.
But they are taking 80% of the increase in taxes that are going into.
Right. Well, the thought was that property taxes are paid only by those in contributing units, units that have to pay property tax. Sales tax is paid by community, visitors, transients, and everything. You know, so that would be a way to spread the cost of those positions across more wallets and less concentrated on individual homeowners and such. But county's got that 2% cap, so there's no way that's going to change.
Is the city able to have collect their own sales tax? I mean, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, there's a process to take a sales tax question to a vote.
That would have to go before the public as a vote.
Yeah. But I'm not saying like, I mean, can you tax like just certain things? It doesn't have to be like everything, like anything that's not to sustain life, you know, like food or whatever, you know, but. Like,
You know, I don't know that I know the answer to the question. We could section it off. We could say in this part of town you could pay additional sales tax. Like we could do that.
Yeah, we have districts we can utilize, and it's a huge economic development tool that we use, like a TIF, or if we had any other sort of specialized bond district, you would have that increase in sales tax already. You can fund bid districts almost like that, I think.
The state is able to do specific taxes like a liquor tax, a gas tax, but is the city?
I don't know if the city has
eligible?
that authority, and maybe we'll take that question and get you an answer.
With a sunset clause.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
mean-
Chris, you would know off the top of your head, would you? I'm not sure.
Like, could we come up with a 0.5 cent sales tax on everything that isn't food
Yeah.
for X number of years and allocate it to first responding budget or something?
Yeah, we can absolutely look into that. I will share with you, not to sway you anyway, just a conversation that we've had with colleagues is that with sales tax, investors look at sales tax when they're looking at your community to invest. So if it's on the higher end, and we would be on the higher end with that half cent, it may or may not play a role in investors coming here.
We've
Just
had
if
this discussion
Okay.
before because when we were talking about a fire station or a law enforcement center or whatever that, have a funding mechanism for that. So it's not a new discussion that we've had. We just haven't really teed anything up or done a whole bunch of homework. We just kind of postulated on it. Thoughts?
One of the big pushbacks you get is from the bigger ticket items like automobiles. People will say, "Well, I'm just going to go to Sedgwick County. We don't have to pay that extra 5% or half-cent sales tax." So.
And I do think you have some of that opportunity, and like I said, probably want to take a break before we get into it, but the next things that we're going to go over is that that other half of percent, and we'll go over where our last notes were for that fund, and if you wanted to give more direction on how we utilize that the not general fund portion. Because again, half of that not general fund portion is for infrastructure, and that can be your buildings, that can be some of that, so.
Take a break?
I think that'd be great.
Awesome. We'll take a break.
15 minutes?
Yeah, that.
If we're going to collect it, we need to be using it.
We are, and we are going to continue on this conversation of sales tax and where it goes and what it funds. So, we're going to talk about the 0.5% that we left off with of that second county sales tax, and we call that our Economic Development Infrastructure Fund. It's got a nice little slash in it. Little quick portion of how it's used. You guys have two large spreadsheets that it pull out in your set of items I gave you this morning, and we're going to go to those in just a second. It is used currently to fund our outside agency requests. A few years ago, you moved those outside agency requests, including the chamber, health ministries, and Harvey County Economic Development out of that fund. You make dedicated bond payments out of it, and you fund both infrastructure and economic development items. So that can be a project, that can be a one-time incentive. All sorts of things have been utilized in this fund since it was created. And just to keep in mind, the connection of this fund to our bond and interest and our CIP is that we're able to transfer those funds from the sales tax to support that bond and interest fund. That's part of the income stream that comes into our bond and interest fund, right? And that's tied to paying off those capital projects that you just saw yesterday. So this sheet has not really moved since you all saw it kind of in the middle of winter-ish. But I thought we'd just give it a quick look so you see what's kind of plugged in. And again, when we're talking about where we can put things. Prior to the last 12 months, these monies were held in aggregate. And the split of economic development and infrastructure was not done in a formal split. It was because a lot of these projects feel like they can be a both and. So this was the list that was started with Donna and Suzanne last year about this time when we just said, let's see if we can break it out. How much are we spending? Is it close to that 50-50 split? And you'll see kind of put on your spreadsheet, again, just giving you that total from 27 to 25, and then your projection out. So on your infrastructure portion, you see that we're still paying the bond for that Sand Creek restoration, a portion of the airport runway, some street overlay, and then this is where the hillside paving is estimated to be paid out of. You see the comprehensive plan was paid out of this portion. You've seen that we've paid for Workington House improvements out of this fund, downtown planters. There was a time when our golf course wasn't doing as well, and so there was a lease payment towards the golf carts that were being paid out of this fund. We do have in our plan to transfer for our emergency warning systems into that MER from this fund because we do own those systems.
Back to that equipment lease, are they then, are you saying that they're going to fund their own lease program ongoing starting in 27?
I believe it's actually even started in 26, but yes, but definitely by 27, it's in there.
Yes, yes.
Good.
Yep. So you can kind of see then with your beginning cash balance and your revenue lines. The sales tax on this sheet is not quite updated to what we put in the budget, but this is that number we can go ahead and be a little bit less conservative with and put in our projected and kind of, again, project it out so that you can see where your estimated ending cash balance is and see what you have. But this is one of the tools you have when we go to activate that capital improvements plan of paying for that bond payment from. And Ben might remember more off the top of his head because I know he was working on this yesterday, but quite a large chunk of the income to bond and indebtedness comes from the sales tax. Do you have that number?
The transfer in 1.5 million?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you're at full bond and interest fund about $1.5 million of it comes from this sales tax fund. So again, you are using non-property taxes to fund those large improvements already. So this is just putting in front of you what you already know, but always a good reminder when we're trying to remember what goes where, right?
It's good to see that Sand Creek Restoration payment dropped after 28 at 310,000.
Right.
Yeah,
It's a good number.
it is. It is. It gives us some ability when we look forward to that giant CIP we gave you all to know that we might have some capacity. And we'll talk more a little bit about capacity after we finish this discussion. But this is just good for you all to see where we get those revenues to pay when we go out to bond something. I don't know if you have any more questions on this one, but I was going to move to the other portion, which is your next sheet in your packet. And this is more what we consider economic development. And again, we just split these out, and that's why you have a fund now that's separate, so that we're not just going to be tracking it in spreadsheets. We're going to, we started the spreadsheet tracking last year. Now we're doing it in funds so that you can really keep a good tab on that. Again, the sales tax, we will update that with our current projections. But then you see your ending balance, which is really important for this fund because otherwise this fund ends in the red very quickly in cash. Again, lots of things that come out of here, things that are regularly payments. We have a couple of bonding issues here as well. We still have bond payments going to 2036 for Building V, which is probably one of the largest reoccurring expenses. We have the KLP streets, they're still bonded in there. And then again, when we have, because there's 2 new bonds that will probably come from in the CIP that I'd mentioned, they'll be rolled into these funds as well. That's the estimated payment for some of those other Spencer and the rail spur. So those are things that we would utilize this to help cover those bond costs. Yeah, actually, you'll see the rail spur estimated at the bottom of your economic development. So it is already estimated payments. And then we put in a number to kind of hold for those incentives or grants because you have chosen as a body to give those out. We put a number in there. You'll see closer to the bottom, just as a placeholder. And you can kind of see what's above on 26, what some we've actually spent on some of those incentives. There's also some salary transfers out of here that are economic development related, and you'll notice those as well as reoccurring expenses. So,
Rebecca, if I'm reading this correctly, in like, for example, at the end of 2025, in the end of 2025 on the sheet that we're looking at,
yep.
the ending cash balance of 1.5 million coupled with the ending cash balance of 2025 of 2.5 million gives us the balance of the economic development sales tax fund.
Sorry, I was not following. The green one is the economic development one. The blue, are you trying to say combined, the combined total?
The combined total of sales tax. So
Yes.
at the end-
Of this half. Yes.
Yes.
Which is why we hadn't pulled these, because again, what you see is one stays in the positive and one runs in a
That's
negative.
what I was trying to get at.
Yes.
That they
Combined they are. And again, when we update the revenues, should be about to bring our 28s in the red, in the black as well, as we update projections. But the reason this looks the way it does is because staff was answering questions that we had a little bit more than a year ago about where are these funds? What's the health of this fund? We know we like to utilize it. We know that it's paying for bond and indebtedness. So what does it look like? And there's a lot of questions I think that came from the public and some other curiosities about, well, how much of it's going to infrastructure, how much to economic development? So how do we kind of true that up? And so that's where these kind of came through. So yes, it is currently running in the black. on both funds, but there is definitely a trend more negative in the Economic Development Fund because of some large committed bonds that don't retire until 2036.
And another question. This just came up right before we started, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. Do we know is there flexibility in not transferring the full half into these funds so as general fund would take more of it? Or is that in how the question was asked when the sales?
In my read of the sales tax question, this makeup has to stay the same. But we can always review that. But in my understanding, this is how the question has been interpreted.
Thank you.
In other words, when it was voted on, that's the structure.
Right.
And we need to follow that structure.
Yes, sir.
Asked and answered.
I feel like if I remember rightly, it was.
That's what you said.
It was Lunda, if those who remember Lunda. And when I first came on board, we had that discussion, so.
Okay.
That's been 10 years, but I can still remember them having that conversation.
It was your fault.
Since we've gone over this more in the detail and you've seen some of these bond payments, are there other questions that come to mind, other requests, things you'd like us to look at? We're always open to new and different and exciting options.
That was aimed at me.
Okay.
Well, you have it. We can certainly come
I
back.
do have a
Oh, yeah.
question. I remember you said that the agents, well, I forget what you call them, agency asks, or like the
Yeah, outside agency funding.
outside agencies, which I would love to see those grouped, but, or just, can you remind me?
We can certainly clean them
remind me
up in
which-
here for you.
Which ones are the,
Sure, definitely. So we have Health Ministries at 40,000. You'll see that kind of in the middle of your economic development one.
senior center?
Yeah. And yeah, Senior Center is in there. And then the EDC is an actual, we say contract amount because it's at interlocal. You'll see
Yeah,
that number in there. And then we should have the chamber. Yes, and the chamber is right above those orange highlighted. So since you just signed a new agreement, we'll have to also, as I'm looking at this right now, we'll have to update that potential number too.
So the additional requests that we heard would also then be added to, would come out of this if we,
It's actually the last question on our slides.
okay.
But yes, if we kept with how you funded them in the past, they would also come out of this fund. Those items had been funded out of the administration budget even when I started. And then the idea to move away from so much burden being put on your property tax dollars was, especially the chamber and Harvey County EDC, which are two of the big ones, are very obviously economic development drivers. So there was an obvious fit. The health ministries is more that larger piece of economic development of keeping a healthy, sustainable workforce. So that's how they ended up there. That doesn't mean if you choose to fund them, they still have to be funded in the same place.
Okay.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and move to my next slide. Maybe. There we go. Bond and interest fund review. So in your budget book, again, you do have bond and interest fund. Again, that's where the revenues come in for the bond and interest and all the expenses come out. It's on page 13 if you're following along in your book. And just as a quick overview, in your 27, you have a starting cash balance of right over 2 million. You've got those revenues coming in, which is a mixture of items, including your mill levy that is set for bond and interest, that sales tax, other type of revenues, as you can see broken out, and it's from the utilities as well. And then you have your expenses of right under 6 million. So we are deficit spending in the bond and interest fund. That's a feature, not a bug. Again, that goes back to how a lot of these funds had been set up. They were set up to be positioned well in cash to allow for that additional spending. So then our ending balance projected in 27, which is, it's a very solid number. We know what our expenses are going to be in here, is at 1.7 million. So when you think about capacity for future growth, your 2028 obligations are kind of still right on the horizon. There are all those things that are just sitting there waiting to be activated through your improvement plan, through things that come across you all, through asks, direct asks, and through those needs that come up. You have that cash of about 1.7 million. You can continue to deficit spend a little bit. But then again, your other options for funding, you're going to have that revenue. And if that revenue doesn't come from a mill levy, your other main source is through your utility revenues or your that infrastructure portion of the sales tax. So I just wanted to kind of paint a picture with the numbers about, as you, couple of you yesterday, I know Commissioner Valentine certainly brought it up, about can we afford all of this? And so this is what we look at when you're asking about great ideas, but can we afford it? This is how we determine that.
We hope next month, this is a snapshot, this is essentially the balance sheet, and we will bring a 10-year projection, which Donna did every year. She actually did a presentation on bond and interest, where we fold everything into bond and interest, and you see the mill levy impact of the projects that are shown here.
And is that expense total percentage, is that the percentage that's looked at when our debt is looked at, as far as
When we're rated.
where we're rated? Yes, thank you.
That's a good question. They'll add what's in the general fund to this fund together and
Okay.
count that as your overall cash that you have available.
So with the general fund and an ending fund balance percentage of
17%
17% added,
to the 1.7 million, so you're around,
okay, so you're not looking, yeah. Yes, right here. But, so how do you, because isn't it 30-some% that you can't exceed?
oh, for the debt maximum.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a margin, there's a debt maximum under the state laws.
Yeah.
Percentage of your assessed value. Yeah, I believe that is 30%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is,
And that's only general obligation bonds that aren't utilities or anything else.
Okay,
Which
okay.
that's very limited here.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of those.
Yeah.
A lot more of it's at utility infrastructure and other such things.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, if we're going to move on, I think I'm going to hand it back to Daniela.
Yes. All right. In speaking with Commissioner Valentine before the session started, I realized that the mill levy history really did need the assessed valuation history, and I did not bring assessed valuation history with me today, so we will bring that back to the next meeting, because I think that helps paint a picture as to why the mill levy increased or decreased. But perhaps your recollection and staff's recollection, we can paint a picture. I'm going to kind of, it speaks for itself. I know the information is there, but I think you can tell that in, let's see, 19, hold on, let me get oriented here. In 2019 to 2020, there was a shift, and that shift happened in general fund. So general fund was trending 45, 47, 48 mils, and then we dropped it. And the reason we dropped it was to increase bond and interest fund. So rather than increasing the mill levy across our funds in bond and interest, we transferred. So we shifted. Instead of having mills in general fund, we used it to pay off debt. I don't know that I know exactly why we did that. Maybe Rebecca can talk about why that shift was made, or if you remember.
Some of that was made because there were a lot of bonds being held at the same time, and a lot of them that the city became liable for, and Building V was one of them.
Okay. So that shift led to a pretty stable mill levy. Actually, you dropped your mill levy from 62 to 61 at the time. And we were able to sustain that for 3 years. And over that period of 3 years, it is my understanding that the expenses outweighed the revenues and the cash at the time, and a decision had to be made of how can we make ourselves whole, which in turn increased the mill levy in general fund in line with where it would have been if it would not have been reduced by that bond and interest levy. So this really does paint a picture that it was absolutely needed. The shift on that increase in debt was I know that was a lot out of your control, and so those tough decisions were made in 2022, 2023.
I'm just going to pipe up with just a little bit more history there. The reason there's such a delay between the increase in bond and indebtedness and the increase that this commission had to vote on was because we had ARPA funding that came through.
Oh.
And that billowed that over a couple of years. If we hadn't had that funding in cash, it would have been a much more immediate.
Okay. Yeah, good point.
I remember that.
So I can speak a little more intelligently on 2024, 2025, 2026. Specifically 2025 and 26. Those were the years that I've worked with you through budget. And because of that increase, the direction of this commission has been, we understand the need to stay ahead of the game and increase slowly so as not to have those large increases. I remember that's one of the first things Kathy said when I started here, like, we understand we need to, but let's be responsible about it. And so the last couple of years have been just that. This mill levy history comes from the confirmation page that comes out at the end of the year. So it's not necessarily what you approve during the budget process. It's the confirmed amount of where assessed valuation lands after the appeal process and after all that. So this is what the county confirms and sends to us based on this mill levy. So it may differ just a little from what you have.
When you add the assessed value to each of these years, could you please add our budget?
Oh, sure.
Because the dollars is where it's at,
You see how?
not the mill levy. You can hide behind the mill levy.
Would you want total budget or general fund?
Total budget, actual, so it would be actual for 25 and before, and budgeted for 26.
Okay. Great. Okay. I know 100%, you've mentioned this to me, that this part of the conversation will come more importantly at the next work session, but I know that you start working backwards. This is not how we're taught in school, by the way. We're taught, you present a budget and then you work, then you levy the mills for that budget. That's not reality. It's what does that mill levy and that cash dollar that could come in look like, and how can we fold in our programs and our priorities into that number? So I want you to know kind of where we stand on revenue neutral rate, what it looks like to not take it or to take it so that you can chew on it before we meet next time. So I'm going to do my best to try and navigate through this, and Ben and Rebecca can help. So our current budget, I say current budget, the 2026 mill rate budget, mill levy is 72.353. 72,353. And that approximately brings in $13 million across general fund, special liability, bond and interest, airport, and the library. So that is current. That's the budget that we're working in. And I put that there so that you can compare it to the scenarios that I put in front of you. Scenario one, which is a direction that you were open to looking at this year, was staying at revenue neutral. And I know that the library just let us know that they are not, they will be increasing the mill levy, which means we can't stay revenue neutral. But set aside the library, and if we wanted to remain neutral, we would be reducing the mill levy to 69.408. That 69.408 is a number that is given to us by the county. That mill rate for 2027 would bring us the same amount of tax dollars that we are bringing in this year. And that breakdown is listed below, which again should mirror above because it's the same tax dollars. I hope I'm not making this more complicated than it is. That's just a scenario so you know kind of what that would look like. The total ad valorem on the top and in the bottom, I realize since it's the same, it should be the exact same number. It's rounding. It's rounding based on the revenue neutral rate that the county gives us. The next page is, again, restating our current mill rate for 2026 budget, which is the 72.353, the ad valorem tax dollars that are brought in with those mills. The other scenario, which is another scenario that you've presented in previous conversations, is taking the R&R. And this is taking the full amount. There's lots of options in between. I mean, you don't even have to stay in between. You could go much less, you could go much higher. I just kind of give you an idea of what it looks like to not take it and to take it. If you'd like more scenarios, we can work on those. Scenario 2 is keeping the mill levy at the 2026 mill rate, which essentially means not keeping it revenue neutral. And the increase in assessed valuation is 4.25%, and that would bring in $555,000. And the split of that $555,000 is listed below with the total ad valorem tax dollars to the side of that. So you see what the increase is from this year to next year.
What's the estimated increase that the library is going to request?
Have you asked?
No, they just said we are exceeding a revenue neutral rate, and we will. Carrie actually said a little bit.
I don't know.
That's what I got, a little bit.
I'm not convinced that we have to accept it. That's a question for Chris, but.
Use at the levy.
Yeah, you
Well,
ultimately, I think it is.
I'm not sure I've ever seen on a budget line item with the words "a little bit."
I know. I think it's her way of saying. Carrie was giving me a heads up, and knowing Carrie's fantastic. She was giving us a heads up, knowing that we were having these work sessions. Just so you know, we anticipate going this route. So actually, she was going to send numbers, so I may even have those in my inbox.
Did you say that they're capped at 6? Or do you think that?
In somewhere,
That's what it boils down
I might be making it up, but I have 6, a state,
from here to here.
it's a state statute where cities can limit their libraries to a 6 mil cap. We will double check that.
Are taking in. Here is, if we go with this, that's how much. Increase that much, so that's their increase. I mean, what does she mean by a little bit? They have them.
Okay. The library typically comes and presents their budget, so they would come and be making that ask, just FYI. Okay, really just information for you to chew on, nothing. Please know these scenarios are not intended for you to take one or the other. It's just purely information to help you understand what a decision, what the implications of a decision to lower or not lower the mill levy would look like dollars-wise. Okay.
So the revenue neutral rate, if we wanted to stay within revenue neutral, the library could raise, and then we would have to lower the equivalent revenue amount?
Correct.
That would be how it would.
Correct.
So we're bound by the airport, the library, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Good, really good point, right? We would have to offset that increase.
But also, right, we can set each one of these mill levies independently, so if the library did increase,
We could keep ours. What we
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just clarifying that.
Yeah,
Or if
yeah.
we needed to, I know you're having conversations about the airport, each one can be moved individually of each other.
Yeah, yeah. For example, if bond and interest, we saw bond and interest, but let's say that the need for dollars in the bond and interest fund based on the projects that it's funding was slightly decreasing, we could decrease that bond and interest levy. Good question. Yeah, really good question. All right, more, we're almost to the end. The next topic of discussion is how would you like staff to proceed with a decision on funding external agencies? What information can we bring you before you make that decision? Or do you have all the information you need? And the reason why is we're asking now is at the next meeting, we'd like to incorporate it into the budget to give you the closest numbers we can to what a final draft would look like. And I know these are little potatoes, but if there was some direction, maybe we'd have an idea of whether we should or should not include it.
Well, to me, I think each one of these agencies have made their case, and I mean, they seem reasonable to me.
I would call it budget dust at this point, but I would say that the door is closed. No more applications or whatever, but I think we should find a way to fund them.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. I guess as we're nearing this part of all of this, I'm looking at, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on what we were just looking at with regard to what would be our tax dollar increase, our collection. 555,599, is that correct?
If you took the increase in assessed valuation, that would be the collection across all funds, all property tax levy funds.
So, with the asks that you have, and including these externals, how otherwise would we fund these asks if we don't?
That's the magic question.
I mean, this is really what we're down
Yeah,
to.
it is. It
Well,
is.
because we have, so our rule is 15%, we're at 17%.
Yeah.
So we've got cash in the bank that we can fund this with, without,
Without accepting the additional
Correct.
revenue, you
Yes.
think?
yes.
Okay, so if that's the case, can we take part of that? Because we got ourselves in a fix when we went several years without doing any increase, and then we had to do what originally came out where we looked like we needed to be was a 12 mil increase, and we settled for 8. I know you recall that. I do, because I heard it from all my neighbors. So the idea is, the best idea is to think incrementally as you move along. So if we are able to fund these things out of the extra cash, why not be protective of some of that extra cash and perhaps accept some of this revenue and give back some?
So maybe 250,000 out of the increased assessed valuation and some out of the ending cash balance, and marry the two together and cover it. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think that would be an encouragement to our citizens, our residents.
I don't know that it's an encouragement to them when they're saddled with increased sales taxes and
Well, but
increased
it's-
expenses and all of that. I don't want to forego the thought of staying revenue neutral, keeping the same amount of revenue this budget year that we had last year. And
So then where possibly could we end up next year with a similar scenario as we grow and anticipate growth? And you come back to us with some similar projections, and then we are at the point where we need to accept all of that. So that's my concern, thinking incrementally. And again, on this side of, and we've all been citizens, residents, we've all been there, and we've all, I will confess myself, had absolutely no clue what any of this meant, sitting on that side of the bench. You have a big learning curve when you come on board here and you understand, so you have to think like a commissioner, but you also have to think like a resident. And so, and I don't mean this to be demeaning of any of our residents, having been there, still there, but if you give back, that picture of giving back has a message that we are not, even though you might not be taking all of it, you're giving back. I think that would help residents see that, hey, they're looking out for us. They do hear us. They did not take all of that. And when I'm caught in opportunities to explain revenue neutral, I have to just be so careful because it took us time to understand that when we first started doing that. We went through probably a couple of budget cycles with Donna explaining over and over before we actually got a grasp of what it meant. So I don't know. I understand the revenue neutral, Rich. I do. I get that. I'm just wondering, is this going to come back to bite us?
No, it could, especially if the legislature makes the changes that they're talking about making. So I just want to have the discussion of this is what that looks like, but we also need to guard against what we see on the horizon. So I'm not a no on anything at this point. I just want to have the discussion.
Well, that's where I like the point you made, because that was not what I considered as far as the extra cash in paying for some of these. But I think protecting some of that so that we stay safe, and considering years to come, we could probably afford to give some of this, I say give back, and use some of it to
Yeah, I'm a
take care.
staunch no on sweeping all the.
Oh, no, yeah, no. So
Did you make that formal?
two thoughts on that. We do have the reserve policy now, so I hope and pray we are never in that pickle again, because that 15% will allow us to ebb and flow and pick up the extra position or two or that project, whatever it may be. So these minimum reserve cash balances are there for a reason. They're there for rainy days. The other thought is, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, how do we know whether we should or we shouldn't? You said give up or give back. I think knowing the increase in assessed valuation coupled with this mill levy history could paint a picture as to why this commission has increased or not increased the mill levy, and what the dollars that have come in that have increased or decreased the budget as a whole. Because currently increasing the mill levy or not taking could be because you brought in an extra $1 million in general fund and it covered everything. So increasing the mill levy could also mean the assessed valuation decrease and you took in less dollars. So until you know that whole picture, I think that would help paint a picture of whether or not it is prudent to give up, to not give up, or what portion, because you see a trend of where revenues and expenses are going with cash. And we will paint that, we will put that all on one sheet once we have a better understanding of where we landed.
And we need Donna's sheet that she normally does for us every year with the impact on a homeowner. So, because it's negligent for us to say, oh, well, it's only $14, because only $14 over 10 years is $140. And, somebody that's fixed income, that property value goes up, their property insurance goes up.
Yes.
And
Yes.
pair that with cost of goods, and it's just a big ugly snowball that we have to be aware of. I mean, our expenses at running this organization, this city, gone up as well, so we can't.
Well, and that 4.425, or was it 4.25 or whatever it was? My understanding is when that happens, it's an average number. So some folks' taxes, their appraised values, and i.e. tax increases, are more than that, and
Some are
some less. So, And so again, the picture of what we might have taken in versus what we are giving back. And Daniela, you said it when we were talking before. The homeowner, and this is probably not the right word, but will enjoy or maybe appreciate that the value, their appraised value has increased, because that does mean ultimately if they would choose to sell, they do benefit from that. But if they can appreciate the increase, but also appreciate not having to pay some of that additional tax because we have given back, and I use those words, and if there's better words, please tell me. We've given back that. I would take that as an encouragement, because so many folks don't understand what goes on here, and especially at this time of year, what happens, what takes place. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I like Rich's point about using some of the cash, at least that 2%, that can fund some of these. So that's my.
The other thing too, just a little excuse me, a little reminder of those credit card fees at $260. Even if we capture 175 of that, that can contribute to exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So so that's why I said we're, as far as I can see, we're having another workshop, obviously,
Yeah.
because I know we had the July 14th thereabout set if we needed it. So obviously we're going to need that. So we're kind of at that place where these are the things we're going to be talking about. I mean, we have all the numbers. Is that right? As far as
Yes, these numbers need to be a little tweaked. They need to be tweaked, because our hope is that we can get that debt, because currently we're dipping into cash without these requests. So the expenditures, at least in general fund, exceed revenues, and so we're already dipping into cash. So how much? I know that 15% is kind of the sweet spot. And what are the implications of dipping into cash this year on the next 2 or 3 years? We need to look at that, because
And anticipate what the regulatory legislature is going to do to our ability to maybe raise in the future. I mean, it's kind of hedge our bet just a little bit.
we're going to do a little. We're going to Ben is going to do some projections
Yeah.
for us.
Ben's team is going to do.
So just not having it on the top of my head, what is that 2% cushion, if you will, equate to in dollars that we could use, so that when we consider all of the additional asks, I know I could, yeah, I'm not, it says 17%, so I'm like, well, okay, I have a calculator, but I haven't done any. I'm going to leave that to the experts.
Yeah. Are you talking about 2% of your expenses?
Yeah, so the ending fund balance, so the 2% that we could play with, if you will.
Yes, if it went from 17% to 20, it'd be about $1 million.
So
So that's a
17.
3% increase. So 750,
So
750,000.
17 down to 15.
Yeah,
So
And
about,
plus,
about half a million to 750.
the enhancement requests are $551,450 increase.
Yeah.
That's for the management and analyst, the firefighters, and et cetera.
all of those are, that would take that.
551,450.
And then the externals, and then the additional revenues that you mentioned with regard to the sales tax. Okay, so yes, that technically more than takes care of it.
Technically, yes.
For
I
this
like how you
year,
put it.
but
like
what
you
does
said.
next year
But
look
so
like?
that's
Yeah,
why,
That's why I'm like, okay,
You
so.
can deficit spend a little bit. You can't deficit spend
So-
forever.
So let's protect some of that, let's protect some, or let's accept some. I'm for accepting some of the additional revenues.
I'm in the same wavelength.
And how much we would accept,
And we can just run a model to show you what
Okay.
that is. So it doesn't glue you to any decisions. It just sets up the discussion for the next time we meet. Does that make sense?
yeah, some
So we can show
scenarios
you.
about maybe 25%, 50, Does that sound reasonable? 25, 50, and up there, we already know what 100% would be.
Yeah, right.
So maybe giving us some scenarios like that.
Yeah,
And
because we
then,
can start one with half, but then we can show what 28 and 29 would look like.
Right.
Say with a modest increase in revenue and some assumptions on the expense side. That's not hard to do for the data we
Okay,
have. So
because
we
if
can
we-
set that up for you.
if we know that 700, I'm going to say 750 is
Yeah.
roughly that, what if we used even half of that, and then we got the other
start
half, or thereabouts, what we need for these asks out of that? Now, I think you understand what I'm asking.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's where I'm at. I don't know where the other commissioners are, but that's my take.
I want to see my options.
I just want us to remember that, or just remind people that these nonprofits do give back to the community in many different ways. I know Safe Hope, they help people in our community move if they need to move to get away from their abuser. They help with utilities or something like that. I think Heart to Heart does some of that too. Senior Center, I'm not sure if they help any of the seniors with any like utility assistance or anything like that. But I do think that they do give back to the community in their own way. So just kind of just want to put that in everybody's mind too.
Thank you, Melanie.
Well, in those kinds of discussions, what we're having, I personally feel like there's room to build in those extra two that we have not. But then the question is, if we do that once, then will that become a part of all of our future considerations?
And then the next asks that come on the heel.
Well, and that's the other thing. So then it's bound to invite additional asks. I think, so that's what we have to decide.
It sounds, please correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like we do want to exceed revenue neutral rate. And whether or not we do are we good with at least proceeding with the steps to exceed revenue neutral rate? So we're following all the guidelines and make sure we're good with the state. And whether or not we do is a totally different decision.
Right, but we can't publish until we say what our max is going to be. So we kind of need to figure that out. So I think we're probably going to, I want to leave the option open to exceed revenue neutral rate.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I think we're good on that. What that number is, I don't think we have enough detail at this point to go publish that we intend to.
Do we, so what we typically do, and Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, what we typically do, what Donna did is so for example, last year, we wanted to reduce the mill levy, but we knew that we weren't going to go over the current or slightly above that. And so she'd put in a number and get it, and we wouldn't wait until we had actual numbers. We started the
I
process.
don't need an
within a
actual
certain-
number, but
Okay.
I don't know that we have, do we have a number that in mind?
From what I hear is we're not planning on increasing the mill levy from what our current mill levy is. So our current mill levy is 72,353.
I think that would be very accurate.
That would be
Right.
your cap. Yeah,
That would be our cap, and we
fair.
could publish that at that.
Yes.
But
I'm fine with that.
just to start the
I
paperwork.
have no intent of
It's
taking
not
that,
going up.
but-
Right, so that's what you're asking then is that, but
Sorry.
then you're going to figure out what we really will be doing.
Yes.
They're going to bring
with
all
these
the options
scenarios.
to us.
And then my other thing is.
Buckle up for everybody thinking we're
Rich.
going to take it all. Just know if you put that out there.
So you plan to be gone between the 5th and the 22nd, is that right?
5th to the
20
27th.
7th, well, give or take. So you won't be here for our next budget workshop.
No, I won't.
So do we need to reschedule that?
We can. We were talking
We were
about that
talking
right
about
before
that
the
earlier,
break.
so.
I mean, I
Do
think
we
you-
have the timeline to do that is the question.
I think we can push a week maybe, or 2. I just need a date where all of you are available after the, you said 27th, you come back?
I will be back the 27th.
Okay.
So it's sounding like it's not possible before you leave, which I know there's not a whole lot of time.
When is our deadline?
And we can
revenue
still
neutral.
manage to do this after he
July?
gets back?
Well, so,
We have to send it to the county, letting them know we're going to exceed.
On the 20th.
I think we
By
can
the
do
20th.
that.
Yeah, we can do that. That, yeah,
now.
yeah.
Have to do
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
this next meeting in July.
right, so there will be a decision.
But we could move the
There will
works.
be a decision to exceed at the next meeting. There
Right.
won't be a decision on the budget
No.
amount.
No.
Right,
Right,
correct.
At the
right.
next meeting.
Just wanted to make sure
There
everybody
will
was,
not be.
Correct.
Okay, so our purpose on July the 14th,
Is to make the motion to exceed the revenue neutral rate with a mill levy not to exceed
Our current.
our
mill.
current,
current.
okay, so that was the evening we were going to have an additional workshop.
Yeah.
Which we're not going to do that until he comes back. So we still have time after to have one more workshop before this all has to be done?
If you go to the next
push
PowerPoint
yours,
slide, we could,
everything else
exactly,
2
yeah,
weeks.
you're ahead of me, yep.
The
We
next
could,
slide.
we could push my presentation of a final budget from the 28th to
The 11th,
the 11th.
Just
Of
move
August?
everything.
11th to the 25th, 25th to, just slide those.
Okay, so you can push the workshop to the 11th?
Yes, the state changed the requirement to have your budget adopted to October
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
a couple of years ago, so it gives us some wiggle room. This would put us really close, but as long as we follow this, we're good.
so then the next budget workshop would be July 28th, is that what I'm following?
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay, no,
Are all
that's
of
not
you-
what I
We're
heard.
canceling the,
I thought you
Shift
said
everything
August the
one-
11th.
Shift everything one line.
Yeah.
Say that again.
are we canceling the 14th?
Oh, well, I
We're
was
still-
just marking out.
The work session would be
Okay.
canceled on the
Yeah.
14th.
Okay, so this is the
August 11th.
August
It would be pushed
Okay.
to,
for this.
that work session would be pushed to,
The public
now I'm
hearing
confused,
of the budget publication deadline.
July 28th.
Yeah,
At what time?
Same time, 5 o'clock?
yeah, we do it.
5
at
o'clock.
5 o'clock.
And we'll send an updated
Okay, okay,
calendar.
so then we're not doing, this is just the meeting only because we were having our workshop on the 14th.
And then right here, workshop on the 28th.
Okay, the workshop is on the, well,
It's not on this list.
The 28th
5 o'clock.
at 5 o'clock.
okay, workshop on the 28th.
We'll send out a calendar this afternoon, yeah.
Yeah, would you?
Yeah. Does the 28th work for everyone?
Yes.
It's going to be a busy day, but oops.
Okay. Yeah,
And
you're
then-
going to come back.
And then just to confirm on calendar for my notes, then the August 11th would be your next meeting, and that's where we would have the city manager present what we would think of as basically our final budget then.
Okay. And then the budget publication is August the 25th.
Send this entire
Yeah,
line out, please.
and then we'll adopt it in September then.
Okay. So when you send that out, will you send out this very same page? Well, the reason why I ask is because I'm going to put it in this notebook.
Yeah.
I know you might send it out additionally another way, but I have a lot of scribbling on this. And I just want a nice, neat page. I'm sorry, that's just being, I won't say the word that it is in public, but
I just want to just double check and make sure my notes follow. Daniela probably already has all this, but from my notes, we were going to get back to where those options on percentages of how much of the assessed valuation to take, to bring back that impact on the homeowner in those scenarios, to add the assessed valuation and the total expenditure budget to that one slide, And then look at your fund projections about 5 years out. Is that, did we miss anything?
I actually have a bigger list. I could repeat what I have gathered over the last 2 days. A final projection of starting cash, revenue, expense, and ending cash for 2027. So sort of a summary of what was presented to you for all the funds. Geo bond presentation. Where we landed on reductions or increases and enhancements. So put that all on one slide, where we landed, because we presented you with all our wants and dreams and all of that, but we're going to tighten that up, if you will. I have health insurance on here. I don't know if someone asked me that, if there's a wish or a want to look at health insurance over the last 5 years. We can provide that in a quick snapshot too. How the credit card fees play into removal of about half, giving up a mill or giving back a mill, or passing them all on. So we'll look at both of those options. And everything that Rebecca said.
Can you add, just add to your list? I want to keep in mind the potential legislative impact on our operations. And I want to future-proof us if we can.
That's a good point.
Ben, do you remember what the bill that was rejected by the governor, did it have a cap of 2%? Do you remember what the cap was?
2% cap and assessed value.
3?
Yeah,
Was that cap via vote, or with the city?
that was statutory cap.
Okay.
Wasn't going to go anywhere. Yeah, and then a whole bunch of hurdles if you didn't take the revenue neutral
Right.
rate. Yeah.
So we could put it as a scenario.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And remind me, I can't remember how that legislation finished when they voted on it, but it did not exempt new development or properties, did it?
No. TIFs, anything that comes back on, if you had an abated property of 10 years that came back on, it was large, you had to absorb that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we do have a few in the
Well,
pipeline
we've
here.
been anticipating those, so
Yeah.
that's the concern.
And that's growth that you count on, right?
Okay. I think, unless you have anything else, we can move into exec.
All right, do we have a motion?
Oh,
How about
we
take a
cannot
little
move
break?
into exec. Yeah, a little break.